Thanks, Andy. Welcome, everybody, to Making It with me, your host, Terry Wollman. We are at the NAMM show, broadcasting live with EnterTalk Media and Caffeine, with a live audience. Hello, everybody. And an interactive internet audience. Hello, everybody out there that's watching. And this is a very cool thing for me to be able to bring Taylor guitars to the forefront, because I've been a Taylor artist for, I think, a little bit over 20 years now. So, and by the way, I created this show to talk about what it takes to stay relevant in the ever-changing landscape of the music business.
Okay.
So this is a perfect conversation and a perfect day to do this, because you're basically going to be showing and talking about your brand new design on the Taylor guitar forefront. So my guest today is Master Guitar Builder for Taylor Guitars, the company that I endorse, Andy Powers. So
thanks for having me.
You're welcome,
it's a pleasure
Andy.
to be here.
And we're playing your newest design guitars.
Yeah, this is a guitar that we call the Grand Pacific. Mm-hmm. Now, this is a piece that I've been working on for about 5 years now. You know, in a lot of ways, I wouldn't call myself a throwback, but I like a lot of different music from a lot of different eras and a lot of different styles.
Right.
Now, growing up, my dad's a carpenter, so that's part of my background as I grew up around woodworking. And along with that, my parents had a huge interest in bluegrass music, a lot of traditional styles, bluegrass, the country western, all these things. So I grew up around this music as going, this is great, this is fun to listen to, these are good stories. They're simple, honest, real human experience stories. And in the years that I've started listening to those records, come all the way to modern times when I've had a lot of chances to work on old instruments, restore instruments for museums and collectors and pieces, sometimes even working on and play the instruments that made some of the records that I love.
Yeah.
You realize a lot of instruments really are not that great. It's like, man, I love the way this record sounds, but the guitar,
not so much.
Not so great.
Right.
it's kind of got a few edges to kind of clean up here, you know? You got a bit of studio wizardry to make things right and make them work well, kind of play well with others, if you will. And so I was thinking, man, it would be really great to build an instrument that had this sound, the sound that we associate with records, this really balanced musical voice. And so right it was the wake of our relaunch of the 800 series guitars in 2014, I started working on this idea. I want to build an instrument that sounds in person like an audio engineer had already
dialed it in.
Have everything with that even balance that you hear.
Which, by the way, that's one of the reasons that Taylor is such a great choice for me as a studio musician as well as touring musician, because the EQ is already where it would end up in a track. So when I'm playing on a record, it already sits where it needs to sit, regardless of the style of music, pop, rock, jazz.
So for a lot of musicians, they gravitate towards our guitars because we have this like a very high fidelity, what I call a modern sound. It's as if the sound was a high resolution photograph of what's going on.
That's a great description.
Right? So you look at this and everything is in vibrant detail. It's very crisp and clean and articulate. Everything sits exactly where it needs to sit. It's like sitting in front of a really great piano.
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
So you sit down and you could play a chord on that piano, and you hear that all the notes are beautifully in tune, but it's a collection of tones. Every
and
note,
overtones.
Yeah, and you get the harmonic content from that. But listening to that chord, you could pick out every one of the notes in there.
Right.
Right. So that's wonderful. I love that sound. It works really well for a lot of musicians. But I also wanted to build a guitar that was like taking that chord off of a piano and playing it on an organ, like a B3.
Right.
So you listen to that same voicing played in that context, and you're not easily going to pick out the individual notes. It's going to sound like one sound.
Right.
You hear the harmony or the relationship between the tones. Okay? It's a whole different personality it's a whole different shape of the note. Like if you imagine drawing a picture, like a diagram of what the note was shaped like. Our modern sounding guitar is like our grand auditorium.
Right.
That's like a triangle. Every one of those notes is perfectly placed. It's a real linear decay on either side. It sits in a mix exactly where it needs to sit. I wanted to build a sound that had a broad note, a big wide note, where it was shaped more like a bell curve. Because for some styles of playing, for a lot of singer-songwriters, for some of the traditional musicians, or somebody who's familiar with a different voice, that's a sound that you can't easily get to, especially one that still has balance, volume, and good intonation, and a very responsive kind of musicality. So that's what's going into this guitar.
So as I listen to you speak, you sound like you're a painter.
I do. I've done a bit of that. Yeah.
I mean, your visual and your description of sound.
I'm terrible at trying to use words to describe sounds.
I disagree. I think you're great at
it. It's like, it feels like it's the wrong language.
Well,
right?
Yes.
Like, I don't know. I mean, how do you describe a sound? Well, the closest you get is to make a comparison.
Yeah.
So you go, it's like trying to describe a taste. What does vanilla taste like?
I wouldn't know where to begin.
I don't know.
Right.
You just find something to compare to.
Right.
That's the best you can do.
Yeah.
And so with these...
Well, that's by us starting by just playing together, which was really fun, by the way. We've never done that.
Yeah.
Really is the best description of the sound of the guitar. Let the guitar speak for itself.
Yeah, I'm always telling players, look, I'll try to describe it. I'll try to give you a frame of reference, something to compare to. But there is no substitution for taking that instrument, playing it. Play it. Make your music with it. Because we don't all love the same flavors. We don't love the same voice. We have different styles, different approaches to the way we play. To me, there's some universally good attributes of a sound that make it musical. So you want dynamic range. You want volume out of an instrument.
Yes.
You want balance. You want great intonation. You want sustain. You want that uniformity in its voice. Those are universally good attributes. Because that's what gives you a musical expressive range.
Regardless of genre of music.
Regardless of genre. The part that is very subjective and very unique to each musician is the sonority or the timbre of that note. What is the personality of the note you're hearing? It's that unique harmonic content that gives one singer's voice its appealing quality and another singer's voice something totally different. It's a totally unique identity. So
I agree.
Those parts I'm after. But as a guitar builder, and knowing that musicians come in all shapes and sizes, all different flavors, different hands, different sets of ears, different band contexts, different performance venues, whether it's in their living room, playing songs for their family or their kids or whatever, or on an arena stage or in a coffee shop or bar gig or whatever, it comes in a lot of flavors. So when I look at the sonority of a guitar, the personality of each note that comes off, I want to deliberately build different styles and different flavors for those musicians.
Right. Which entails using different kinds of woods, different size bodies. And also now a new bracing. Which is very cool because you are showing this now at the show.
Absolutely.
It's a big announcement.
So the V-Class bracing idea, we had first introduced it in our grand auditorium guitars this past, winter NAMM last year. But just on a very limited basis within one body shape. That's all we had kind of prepared tooling for. We go, okay, I came up with this idea to make a guitar that has even more expressive range. Now, many acoustic flat top steel string guitars, there's an inherent balance problem that you have, where to make a note that plays a long time, what we call long sustaining, you need the instrument to be very rigid, more like an electric guitar. That you put a string across a really stiff plank of wood, it'll stay in motion for a very long time. You know, we make jokes in Spinal Tap about it, about coming out and going out, getting a bite to eat, and come back, and it's still doing that thing. On the other hand, you think about where does volume come from? in an acoustic instrument. That comes from flexibility. It's from air displacement. You need this thing to move like it was a loudspeaker. So how in the world am I supposed to balance these things? I need it to be strong so the notes last a long time. I need it to be flexible so that you can make good volume out of it. Well, that's a problem. I can't get one without giving up some of the other. My hands are tied here. So I came up with this way to build a guitar that's borrowing a little more from the electric guitar tradition, as well as archtops and mandolins and other instruments, and combining these ideas to go, well, here's a design that has a huge amount of control. It can be rigid where you need it to be. It can be flexible where you need it to be, so you have good sustain and good volume. You have better intonation than you've had. You have all these wonderful attributes where you can deliberately build in certain characteristics that you're after. So when you play the guitar, you go, wow, every note has very even sound pressure. It's very even sustain, a very even voice. All the notes, even on the high part of the fingerboard, they all ring out with clarity.
Yeah, they do, and it's equally easy to play wherever you are on the neck. You know, one of the things that I personally love about Taylor, and I'm biased, because I've been playing Taylors for years, and I'm proud to be biased, because we've all played a lot of really wonderful instruments, over our careers. But the thing is, you guys, you're essentially a factory. You're highly automated. However, the soul and the spirit of each guitar feels like it's a handmade instrument.
That's the intention. We're not a manufacturing facility that happens to build guitars. That's not what we do. We are guitar makers who have developed a wonderful production capacity to create these instruments. We're not just, a widget maker.
Well, and at the beginning of your career, when you were independent, before you joined with Taylor, you were a little resistant, I understand, to move into doing something on a broader scale because you were handcrafting instruments.
Yeah, I mean, I started building guitars when I was a little boy. I was 7 or 8 years old when I tried building my first guitar. So this is all I've ever really done is build and restore instruments for musicians and play music. And so I was thinking, I'll just be like Geppetto. I'll build, a handful of guitars every year for my entire life, and I'm good. I'm happy that way. And so when Bob approached me about combining our strengths, combining efforts, at first I thought, it's not really what I was imagining. And having talked about it for months and months, after that, we realized, okay, well, this is a really good thing because my goal is to put great instruments into the hands of musicians. Now, working alone, I could do that for 10 people a year, dozen people a year. I could make their lives really great. They have this wonderful instrument.
And you have a beautiful life through the process of doing that.
It's very pleasant. Very, very enjoyable. But working in the context with Taylor Guitars and this amazing production facility and production team, we get to take these designs and scale them up so that thousands of musicians around the world get to enjoy these instruments. And in doing so, we can make their lives better. We can provide for our incredible employees who are invested heavily into creating these guitars. We can provide for the folks around the world who are dependent on supplying materials to build these designs with. So there's a whole lot of good that can come out of an enterprise like this.
You're speaking about getting guitars in the hands of people, musicians around the world, and I notice that when I travel and I'm going through an airport with any of my Taylors, whether it's my 912C, that I've had for 21 years, or a baby Taylor, or a Mini.
GS Mini, or
something. The Mini,
the people's guitar.
Yeah, they're great, but it's inevitable that whatever security line I'm in, or some pilot will be walking by with his crew, and will go, "Oh, is that a baby or a Mini?" So there are a lot of people that fly professionally, non-musicians, actual pilots and crew that travel with their Taylors.
Absolutely.
And anytime it's and they always want to see it. Even if it's another baby, or it's kind of, you've created a really beautiful community out there in the world.
I mean, music is too important to leave up to the professionals.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's far too important for that.
And I love that you're building not just for artists like myself, but for everybody.
Yeah.
And for the same reason and with the same intention and the same passion.
Yeah, like, I mean, even for myself, my wife and I have 3 young kids. One of my nightly gigs is to play bedtime songs for them, right? Yeah. I've played Twinkle Twinkle Little Star a whole lot of times by now. You know, that's a totally valid reason to be playing music. If somebody's playing 3 chords in their living room to wind down from the day, that is a totally perfectly acceptable reason to pick up a guitar and go, no, this is where it fits in my life. Of course, some people will be on an arena stage. They'll be in a huge concert venue or whatever. That's wonderful. It might be in a studio or writing songs, but I don't necessarily see that as more important than some of these other uses.
Well, on that note, because I know you're on a really tight schedule, I needed to let you go.
Fair enough.
But why don't we play out a little bit? And once again, I'm Terry Wollman, and this is Making It. And I am with Andy Powers, the master guitar builder and designer for Taylor Guitars, who I am very proud to be an endorsee of. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
For staying with us.
Play that new tune you started.
Yeah, this is something, let's just jump in.
I'm a natural born follower.
As am I, and a natural born leader too. So, something we were just working at.